I woke up to strangers setting up lawn chairs on my land, kids running through my pasture, and a woman in a blazer telling me it was all perfectly legal, and by the end of that week the same woman would lose everything she thought she controlled. It started with a letter, thin paper, official tone, zero shame. One page telling me my ranch. My family's ranch had been reclassified as community property by an HOA I had never joined, never paid, and never agreed to. I stood on my porch that morning with coffee going cold in my hand, rereading the words, waiting for them to make sense. They never did. According to the Willow Creek Homeowners Association, my land was now a shared recreational asset due to something they called historical community use. No fire, no theft, no court order, just paperwork and audacity. I laughed at first, the kind of laugh you do when something is so stupid your brain refuses to process it. Then I heard tires on gravel. A sedan rolled up my driveway like it owned the place, HOA logo plastered on the door, crisp and bold, the kind meant to intimidate. Out stepped Margaret Dawson. Perfect blazer, clipboard hugged to her chest, posture stiff with self-importance. Two board members followed her, overdressed, over-dentisted smiles, the kind of people who'd never shoveled anything heavier than paperwork. "Mr. Monroe," she said, like she was reading a warrant, "I'm Margaret Dawson, president of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association." I didn't answer. Silence makes people like her uncomfortable. "We sent you a letter regarding the community land designation," she continued, tapping the clipboard. Designation. Like she was naming a playground, not stealing land. I crossed my arms. "My land," I said finally. "Yes," she replied smoothly. "Due to historical use, the board voted to incorporate it into our jurisdiction." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. It didn't come. "You voted," I said slowly, "to take land you don't own." She smiled like she was explaining math to a toddler. "The community has enjoyed access for years." Behind her, one of the board members cleared his throat. "I've walked your eastern pasture many times," he said proudly. "Great view." That's when it clicked. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was entitlement with paperwork. Before I could respond, another car pulled in. Then another. Families spilled out like it was a festival. Coolers, picnic baskets, dogs on leashes, kids already running toward my fields. "What the hell is this?" I said. Margaret beamed. "Community engagement," she replied. A man tossed a frisbee across my pasture like it was a park. I snapped. I marched over, voice raised, telling them to get off my land. They looked confused, not guilty. "The HOA said it's open now," one woman said. Margaret placed a hand on my shoulder, light and possessive. "Jack," she said sweetly, "this transition will go much smoother if you cooperate." I shrugged her hand off. "Get off my land." More cars were arriving. Minivans, SUVs. Someone started setting up a volleyball net. Something inside me broke clean in half. I told Margaret she had 5 seconds to clear my property. She didn't. Instead, she smiled thinly and said, "We'll escalate this." Her people retreated, the crowd sensing tension, packing up reluctantly. As her sedan pulled away, she leaned out the window. "You'll be hearing from our lawyer," I smiled back. "You'll be hearing from mine." That night I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured strangers wandering my land, treating it like a public park. Morning came too fast. By 8 a.m., a minivan rolled in. Kids poured out. A yoga mat followed. "The HOA app said playgroup meets here now," the woman said. I told her no. Then another car came. Teenagers with a drone. Then a man with a smoker. "Grill-friendly zone," he said. By noon I had turned away more people than a nightclub bouncer. And then Margaret showed up again. This time with accusations. She claimed I was being hostile, aggressive, obstructing community access. I stared at her. "You sent them here," I said. She nodded calmly. "Yes." That was the moment the anger sharpened into something else. Not rage. Resolve. I called Curtis McGraw. Curtis doesn't lose. He listened quietly, then laughed once. "Oh, they really messed up." Within an hour, I was at the county records office. Dusty files, old deeds, clear boundaries, and then I found it. An annexation request filed 3 weeks earlier, signed by Margaret. No owner signature. No legal standing. Just lies typed neatly and submitted with confidence. I photographed everything. Then I went to the hardware supplier. Electric fencing. Low voltage. Legal. Cameras. Motion lights. Warning signs. By sundown, my ranch hummed quietly with electricity. Not dangerous. Just unmistakable. The next morning, the cameras lit up. Cars lined the fence. Margaret stood at the front, clipboard trembling. "This fence is a danger to the community," she shouted. "It's only dangerous to trespassers," I replied. She demanded it be removed. I declined. She threatened legal action. I told her I had her paperwork. That's when the murmurs started. Homeowners whispering. Confusion spreading. I mentioned the number. $200,000. Back dues. Liability. Insurance. If my land was part of the HOA they owed me. Faces changed. Fear replaces entitlement fast. An emergency meeting was called. I went. The room was packed. Margaret looked different. Less confident. More desperate. People shouted. Questions flew. Documents were raised. Her lies unraveled in real time. A vote was called. She lost. Quickly. Decisively. Her clipboard hit the floor. I left before anyone could celebrate. The next morning, a moving truck sat in her driveway. I watched from my porch, coffee in hand. Silence where chaos had lived. No one stepped onto my land again. One sentence stayed with me through all of it. Paperwork only works if you let it replace reality. A week later, an envelope showed up in my mailbox with no return address. Inside was a single sheet formal stamped final. The Willow Creek Homeowners Association formally withdrew all claims to my property, acknowledged a procedural error, and agreed never to reference my land again in any future communication. No apology. No explanation. Just quiet retreat. That silence was louder than anything Margaret had ever said. For a while I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Because once you push back on people like that, really push back, the aftershocks travel. Neighbors I'd never met before started waving when they passed my fence. One guy stopped his truck and told me he'd been fined 3 times for leaving his trash bin out 15 minutes late. Another woman whispered that Margaret had tried to dictate the color of her front door. Twice. They weren't celebrating. They were relieved. And that told me everything. The cameras stayed up. The fence stayed on. Not because I was afraid anymore, but because boundaries matter, especially after someone tries to erase them. A month later, Curtis forwarded me a notice. Margaret had resigned. Not stepped down. Resigned. Effective immediately. No farewell email. No announcement. Just gone. I didn't feel triumph. What I felt was something steadier, like regaining solid ground after standing on ice. I went back to my routine. Morning feed. Fence checks. Coffee on the porch while the sun came up slow over land that hadn't moved an inch, no matter how many clipboards tried to say otherwise. Every now and then, a car would slow near the road like someone considering whether to turn in. They never did. The signs were clear. Private property. No ambiguity. No fine print. One afternoon, I saw a new HOA president walking the edge of the road with a surveyor. They didn't cross the fence. They nodded politely. I nodded back. That was enough. People think power looks loud. Threatening letters. Legal jargon. Meetings and votes and forced smiles. But real power is quiet. It's knowing where you stand and standing there without asking permission. Margaret thought authority came from a title, from a blazer, from the confidence to say something outrageous without blinking. What she forgot or never learned was that authority ends exactly where consent does. She crossed that line. And the moment she did, everything she built on top of it collapsed. I didn't win because I yelled louder. I didn't win because I scared anyone. I won because I refused to let fiction replace fact. Because land doesn't change ownership just because someone prints a letter. And because sometimes the most dangerous thing to an overreaching system is someone who knows the rules better than they do. That ranch is still quiet now. No frisbees, no yoga mats, no strangers calling it shared space. Just wind through the grass and the hum of a fence doing exactly what it was meant to do, holding a line. And the lesson's simple. If you don't defend what's yours, someone else will try to redefine it.